triangle cleats. I use these to reinforce inside corners on cabinet feet, end tables, and any inside corner that could use some added structural integrity. I make these cleats out of pine. You can see that there's a little flat ridge on the 90-degree corner part. That is to allow for some glue squeeze out and to ensure that the cleat is seated properly. You might wonder why not just use a square scrap block to reinforce corners. And there's a couple reasons for that. This is the project that I'm working on right now, making a bunch of these simplified snack racks that hold baskets for potato chips. And you can see the triangle cleat doing its job in there. It looks a little bit better, has a more finished appearance, but the biggest reason why I like these is because they're easier to paint than a square block. I can just go right over it with the roller and it gets into these 45 inside corners just fine, but a square block will produce double the amount of inside corners, which is more difficult to paint, requires more brush work, and tends to create more drips. So I can paint faster and neater with the triangle cleats, and that's the main reason why I like them. So I'm going to make two different sizes of cleats. This is 5/4 pine, which measures 1 1/8 inches thick, and this is a nice 1x12 4/4 pine, which is 3/4 inch thick. You want to find stock that's reasonably flat, which is hard to do with the quality of wood nowadays. This one is somewhat flat. I think I'll do a pass on the joiner with this one just to be prudent. But this piece is a little bit too cupped to do what I'm going to do with the table saw. So I found another piece in here. This is another really nice 1x12. And you can see it's very reasonably flat. So I'm going to use this piece to make the triangle stock. I will do a couple cross cuts, 36 or 40 inches long, which is a good length to work with for repetitive cuts. And I'll show how to get this done. I make these triangle cleats every few years, so I have enough material laying around so I can just use it as I'm building. Pine is the best material to use for these cleats because it's soft and homogeneous, not too grainy, and so it staples and glues well. So if I had to use this piece of wood, if I didn't have a substitute, what I would do is just rip it down the middle and re-glue it. This piece I'm going to flatten one side on the joiner and then edge glue it so it's a wider stock. So I made my first rip at 10.5 inches to get this started. And now what I'm going to do is move the fence over incrementally, exactly 1 inch at a time. So I'll set the saw at 9.5 inches exactly, and then flip these boards over to do the other cut and repeat that process. But this is how I make the triangle stock on the 3/4 inch pine. You just have to do 1 inch increments, which is easy to remember, and that's pretty much it. The 5/4 stock requires a spacing of 1 5/16, and this is a much more difficult fraction to add and subtract. So I'm using a piece of tape and a marking block to space out the increments and avoid making a math error. So this is how many triangle rips I got out of a 1x12 10-footer. And then 6 feet of 5/4 by 8 pine. I got 9 pieces there. And this has to be one of the best uses of plastic wrap in the wood shop for cutting small parts on the chop saw. And that is to just gang these rips together. And the saw blade cuts right through the plastic. It doesn't catch on the blade. It's perfectly safe. A lot safer than if the parts were loose. And so that saves a lot of time and makes those cuts a lot more accurate and safe. So that's a great tip. I get the plastic shrink wrap in all different sizes. The 2-inch is good for this.